So they say that eyes are the windows to the soul, and recent findings in neuroscience research have proven this is more true than ever before. What if I said that just by looking at your eyes, I could tell you about your past? What if I said I could tell you your future? And what if I said by playing games on your phone, you may be able to improve your mood, reduce your depression, reduce your anxiety, and this might even be just as effective as traditional therapy? In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk through a lot of this research talking about each of these things. So as you've been walking around today, and as you walk through your life, you're confronted with a lot of people, right? And there's constant information coming into your brain. You choose what to focus on, right? And sometimes you focus on things even when you're not choosing to do it. Your attention's drawn to different things. You probably noticed it this weekend, right? Coming back to campus, if you're coming here for the first time in a while, you're seeing old friends, or if you're still a student here and you're walking around and seeing if you see someone you know. If you're the type of person that tends to pay attention to the people who are looking angry or grumpy and not excited to see you, it's going to affect your mood. You're going to start feeling the exact same way. Instead, if you're the type of person who tends to focus on the positive people around you, then it's going to enhance your mood and you're going to start feeling better, right? So what you pay attention to can influence your mood. It works the other way just as well. So the way you're feeling influences what you tend to pay attention to. So if you're walking home late at night through a dark alley, you might feel anxious. And if you're feeling anxious, you're going to be really on the lookout for anything that might jump out from the shadows, right? This makes sense to us in neuroscience because of the way the eye's connected to the brain. So the eye's connected to emotional centers within the brain, like the amygdala, and this forms a circuit of emotion regulation where you have these prefrontal areas that will downregulate amygdala activity and also help you to disengage your attention from one thing or engage your attention in something else. Here's the first thing I'll talk about today. So we've done a lot of studies in our lab where we look at subtle changes in pupil dilation. So if you see something that's emotional, your pupil will dilate slightly. We've shown that kids of depressed moms, so moms who have a history of depression, their pupil will dilate specifically to sad faces. Kids of anxious moms, their pupil will dilate specifically to angry faces. So your pupil reflects the environment you grew up in as a kid, and it reflects your experiences. So that's exciting enough for us. What we then wanted to do was say, well, can we use this information to predict which kids are going to go on to develop depression in the next couple years? This is what we found. So we looked at the kids who had the highest level of pupil dilation just to sad faces. 5 out of 10 of them developed a depressive disorder in the next 2 years. Compared to kids with the lowest levels of pupil dilation, only 1 out of 10 developed a depressive disorder in the next 2 years. So not only does this reflect your past experience, it can also tell us what's likely to happen to you in the future. Our goal with this is to say, okay, we can use this as a marker of risk, and then we can intervene early to prevent this from happening. Here's another interesting thing. If we look at just depressed kids, they tend to look more at happy faces and less at sad faces. This makes sense to us because if the pupil's indicating how emotionally reactive you are, right, looking at a sad face is going to make you feel even worse, so they're choosing to attend to a happy face as a way to try to make themselves feel better. Right, this sounds like it would be adaptive. The interesting thing for us is that adults seem to lose this ability. So in depressed adults in our lab, what we've shown is that they have a hard time disengaging their attention from angry faces. Once their attention lands on an angry face, it gets stuck there, and they can't pull their attention away. The interesting thing about this is that this also predicts their risk of relapsing into a new depressive episode in the next couple years. So among the women who have the highest level of attention to angry faces, 6 out of 10 will develop a new episode of depression in the next 2 years, compared to 2 out of 10 women who don't get stuck on the angry faces, right? So this is a threefold increase in risk based just on what you tend to pay attention to. Okay, so now that we know this, now that we can predict risk, right, the next logical question is, well, what can you do about it, right? It's only helpful to know risk if you can then do something to help people. What if we could find a way to change what you pay attention to, and what if that would change your mood? people are starting to test these types of interventions out. So this is a computer-based intervention to change your attention. What you do is you have two different things on a computer screen. One is that bad thing you tend to focus on. The other thing is something more positive or at least less negative. These show up on a screen for a little while, and then they disappear, and it's just a letter or something else appears on the screen. All you have to do is say, is this an E or an F, right? And we do this a bunch of times, right? Did you notice a pattern? The letter always follows the more positive thing. So what we're doing without people even having to consciously process this is training them to pull their attention away from negative things and focus more on the positive things. There's preliminary evidence, it's still really early with this, but there's preliminary evidence that this might be a useful way of treating anxiety and depression. Some studies have found that you can reduce depression and anxiety by as much as 50% just by using these computer-based games. I'll give you an example of something we've done on campus. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but some college students tend to drink a lot, right? Some of them drink so much that it becomes a problem. So what we did is we had students on campus. We had the ones who were the really heavy drinkers, and we brought them into the lab. We then showed them a list of words and said, pick out the words that seem most relevant to you when you're drinking, right? And everybody picked whichever of their favorite alcohol words were. We then put this into our training program, and so we had an alcohol word and a neutral word. We trained them to pull their attention away from the alcohol word and focus more on the neutral word. We gave them the computer program on a thumb drive, sent it home with them, asked them to do it twice a week for 4 weeks. It only took about 10 minutes per time for them to do this, so this isn't a very intensive intervention. At the end of the month, we had reduced their drinking by 30%, right? This is still, again, early days, but it shows that if you can identify a basic mechanism, then you can target that mechanism really, really directly and have an influence on behavior and have an influence on mood. Okay, the problem is these things are really, 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 really boring, and people do not like doing them. They certainly won't go out and do it on their own, right? But what if we could turn it into a game? Right? Wouldn't that be nice? What if we could turn it into a game that you had on your phone so it was always with you, right? People have done this. So this is Dr. Tracy Dennis at Hunter College. She's developed an iPhone app where two sprites pop up out of the grass. One looks really angry and critical, the other one's neutral. After they disappear, a little swish appears in the grass. All you have to do is trace the pattern with your finger, right? The exact same type of thing. The swish always occurs after the neutral face, right? So even without you knowing what's going on or you having to focus very much, you're training your attention away from the angry face. You get high scores, they give you like these badges and icons, right? And so it's actually an engaging game to play, and people play it without knowing that they're training their attention, right? They do it without knowing it's good for them, which is excellent. Okay. Here's the interesting thing, pulling back to the neuroscience perspective. There's evidence now that these types of interventions increase activity in the prefrontal areas that I was talking about at the beginning of my talk. So it increases activity in these emotion regulation centers of the brain. We think this is extremely exciting. It shows that you can use basic findings in neuroscience, you can translate them into clinically applicable types of strategies, and you can make a real difference. Now, what we're hoping to do is to make these even better, more engaging, and then transfer them into kids that we know are at risk and start our interventions before they actually develop any of these disorders. That's our hope. Thank you very much.